Passport ready? You've got your flight tickets sorted? Bags packed, ready for your journey to the land of the rising sun. Millions of people travel to Japan every year. For some, it's the pull of the massive cities like Tokyo and Osaka, but for others, it's the ancient temples, the cherry blossoms, anime, Ghibli, the bullet train, or maybe the incredible food. And if you're planning a trip anywhere, chances are you'll have picked up a guidebook or browse travel websites. Books like Lonely Planet and other travel guides can, of course, be fantastic resources. They tell you a lot about what you need to know, where to stay and what to eat, how to get around, and which attractions are worth visiting. And in many ways, they're the perfect starting point. They are really useful. But they can also only take you so far. What they often can't do is explain the deeper forces that have shaped a place, the history, the aesthetics, the stories and traditions, the values and its people. So for that, I think we need different kinds of books. So if you're ready for your trip to Japan, here are some book recommendations to read before or during your trip, things that can reveal the truths about a culture that no guidebook ever could. Here are 10 books I think everyone should read before traveling to Japan. But maybe give this one a miss until you get back home. The first 3 books approach Japan from a very different angle: aesthetics, history, and even spirituality. The first being here, In Praise of Shadows by Jun'ichirō Tanizaki. If there is one book that explains why Japan often feels very different from the West, it's this. It's a really beautiful little thing, actually. Look how it's very, very thin. Written in 1933 by novelist Jun'ichirō Tanizaki, the short essay explores everything from architecture and interior design, excuse me, to lacquerware and food, traditional Japanese rooms, and even toilets, asking what it is that makes something beautiful. And what it explains is where Western culture has traditionally celebrated brightness and clarity and ornamentation, Tanizaki is making an argument that Japanese aesthetics have long found beauty in the shadows and in the silence and in perfection and suggestion. Rather than just flooding a room with light, traditional Japanese architecture embraces the darkness. And despite being written almost a century ago, many of Tanizaki's observations still feel remarkably relevant today. And if you do read the book, you'll start to notice his ideas everywhere in Japan, in the temples, in the gardens, the restaurants, the tea rooms, and even modern Japanese design. It is, as I said, a very small book, but one that can completely change the way you will see Japan and questions how the old Japan is slowly disappearing. Travelers will certainly be able to recognize the clash of the old and the new. There are, somewhat sadly, many history books on Japan, the World Wars, and of course the bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki. It is Hiroshima or Hiroshima that I want to discuss next. I have it, here it is. Here it is. First published in the New Yorker in 1946, just 1 year after the atomic bombing of Hiroshima. The book was actually groundbreaking for its time because rather than focusing on military strategy or politics or the wider context of the Second World War, Hersey chose a different approach completely. He told the story through the eyes of 6 ordinary people who survived the bombing. It is a clerk, a doctor, a widow, a priest, a minister, and a young surgeon. I think the young surgeon actually has other books just dedicated to his story, which focus a little bit more on the events around him. But this decision of Hersey really transformed Hiroshima from a historical account into something far more powerful. The atomic bomb is often discussed in terms of numbers and statistics, the casualties, military objectives, and geopolitical consequences. But Hersey cleverly strips away all of these abstractions and reminds us that history is ultimately experienced by its individuals. Through his really vivid reporting, we witness the confusion and the fear, the suffering, of course, and resilience of the people whose lives were changed forever in this single moment. Hersey's writing is really clear, it's compassionate, and he's just allowing the story of the survivors to speak for themselves. And the result is one of the most influential works of journalism ever written, and a book that obviously remains deeply moving nearly 80 years after it was written. For travelers visiting Japan, and I do recommend visiting Hiroshima, this provides an important historical context for understanding the country that emerged after the war. Naturally, if you're looking into coming to Japan, you'll notice that Japan is really associated with things like technological innovation, maybe its economic prosperity, cultural exports such as anime and manga and its cuisine. Yet beneath all of this modern image lies a 20th century history shaped by its conflict and massive destruction, its reconstruction and renewal. A visit to Hiroshima today can be a profound experience. I remember years ago, my first time to Japan, me and my friends did visit Hiroshima, and it is a very deeply moving and profound experience. The city is now really vibrant and welcoming and full of life, but reminders of the past remain visible throughout the Peace Memorial Park, the Atomic Bomb Dome, and the Hiroshima Peace Memorial Museum. So reading Hersey's book before visiting these sites adds a level of understanding that transforms them from historical landmarks into places of human memory. Next, number 3. This one is just a really lovely thing to return to on your travels. It's a nice companion piece to read along your journey. This is a book that perfectly captures Japan. Written in the late 17th century, it is by the poet Matsuo Bashō. Part travel diary, part poetry collection, and part spiritual reflection, this chronicles Bashō's journey through the remote northern regions of Japan, a journey undertaken not in search of adventure or sightseeing, but in pursuit of beauty, contemplation, and a deeper understanding of the world around him. For modern readers, the book will initially feel very different from contemporary travel writing. Bashō records fleeting impressions, like a mountain shrouded in mist, the sound of insects in summer grass, an ancient temple hidden among trees, or the changing colours of the seasons. And these observations are often accompanied by haiku, poems of remarkable brevity that attempt to capture a single moment in time. Yet it is precisely this attention to small details that make this book so rewarding. Many visitors arrive in Japan eager to see the country's famous landmarks, but one of the most memorable aspects traveling there is often something much quieter, like its peaceful gardens, or these hidden narrow streets, or the sound of the rain in the temples, the sights of the cherry blossoms drifting through the air. So Bashō's writing encourages us to slow down and notice these moments. The book also introduces readers to one of the most important concepts in Japanese culture, the importance of impermanence. Throughout the journey, Bashō reflects on the passing of seasons, the rise and fall of historical figures, and the fleeting nature of human life. Beauty, in his view, is often inseparable from transience. There are really powerful messages here that really make you think. Think about how things are precious because they do not last. So I think, for you and I, for anyone traveling to Japan, the narrow road to the deep north offers something that few guidebooks really can provide at all, a different way of looking at Japan. Rather than just looking at these famous landmarks or these maybe cliche spots to go to, Bashō invites us to pay attention to other things, to the landscapes, to the seasons, to its history, and the small details that give Japan its character. More than 300 years after it was written, the book still remains a timeless companion for anyone visiting Japan. So definitely recommend this book. So, part 2. Next, I go to travel writing. Not travel guides, but personal experiences of writers traveling through Japan. And my next pick is this, The Roads to Sata. One thing I heavily recommend to anyone visiting Japan is that they must get used to walking, or they must walk. They must walk, and they must expect to walk a lot. The train systems in Japan are, of course, amazing, but it's walking that reveals all these little secret nuggets of Japan, these little unknown gems that won't appear online or any travel book. One writer, in particular, Alan Booth, walked 2,000 miles of rural Japan, traversing Japan's entire length on foot, from Soya to Cape Sata in the extreme south, across 3 islands. This is a really witty, unique take on that prodigious task. It says on the front here, not only the best travel writer on Japan, but one of the best travel writers in the English language. So Booth was actually more of a city guy, but he has this extraordinary ability to capture the feel of rural Japan in his writing. Throughout his long and arduous trek, he encountered a variety of different people who inhabit the Japanese countryside, from fishermen and soldiers to bar hostesses and school teachers to even hermits, drunks, and homeless. His wonderful and often funny descriptions of these encounters are the highlights of these pages, painted a multifaceted picture of Japan from a perspective of an outsider, but with the knowledge of an insider. The Road to Sata is travel writing at its best, I think, illuminating and disarming, critical but respectful. Perhaps what the book lacks in complexity of plot and characters is compensated for with its vivid and elaborate descriptions of what he personally experiences. He is armed with a recorder that captures the day's events and conversations, and Booth describes his notes daily and subsequently fills the pages of the book with accounts so vibrant that you can actually picture the setting he so painstakingly details. He has stories of evenings spent with sumo wrestlers, baseball teams, and random Japanese families really range from hilarious to downright peculiar. And though he was an Englishman, Booth was sometimes mistaken for an American, and one tale of particular interest and humour involved him visiting an American military base. Perhaps the most profound part of the entire book, however, is when Booth is rather aggressively mistaken for an American while visiting the Peace Memorial in Hiroshima. So a fantastic piece of travel writing that I heavily recommend. Just a very, very different perspective. For my next choice, many people interested in Japan will likely have already heard of a man called Chris Broad from his hugely popular YouTube channel, Abroad in Japan, where he has spent more than a decade, I think, documenting his life, his travels, and misadventures. His videos have actually introduced millions of viewers to everything from rural villages and hidden islands to language learning, Japanese workplaces, food culture, and the occasional bizarre cultural misunderstanding, all with his dry English wit and self-deprecating humor. He has a book called Abroad in Japan, and this brings some of that perspective to the page. This is, you would describe this as being part memoir, part travel writing, part cultural commentary. Abroad in Japan chronicles Broad's arrival in Japan as a young English teacher with little knowledge of the language and even less understanding of what awaited him. What follows then is a highly entertaining account of culture shock, these awkward encounters, unexpected friendships, and gradual immersion into Japanese life. What makes this book particularly enjoyable is Broad's sense of humour. He has a real talent of finding comedy in these everyday situations, whether he's struggling with Japanese bureaucracy, navigating social customs, or finding himself in increasingly absurd situations while traveling around the country. The result is a book that is informative without ever feeling like a guidebook, and educational without becoming overly serious. For first-time visitors, I would say that this fresh perspective is actually quite valuable. For any readers who aren't really as interested in maybe Japanese history or traditions and cultures, here readers can gain a better understanding of the country they are likely to encounter themselves, one filled with convenience stores, train stations, local festivals, friendly strangers, and occasional moments of complete confusion. I was there. I've been there myself, definitely. It's also worth mentioning that Broad has a new book on the horizon, one that may prove even more useful for prospective travellers. While his first one, Abroad in Japan, focuses largely on his personal experiences living in the country, his upcoming work, I think, explores some of Japan's lesser known regions and destinations, venturing far beyond the familiar tourist routes of Tokyo, Kyoto, and Osaka. So in many ways, this one actually promises to be more of an exploration of the Japan that exists off the beaten path. The small towns, remote landscapes, and the more overlooked corners that many visitors never get the chance to see. So I'll definitely be checking that one out as well. So thank you, Chris Broad. Congratulations on the books. Maybe one day I'll bump into you around Tokyo. Who knows? Right, part 3, we enter into Japanese fiction. If I had to choose a single novel that captures the emotional foundations of modern Japan, it would be this, Kokoro, written by Natsume Sōseki, also known for a few other books that could easily be included in this list as well. I've got one here called Botchan, or I Am a Cat, which he also wrote. This one, published in 1914, near the end of the Meiji period, the novel arrived at a pivotal moment in Japanese history. So for decades, Japan had been rapidly modernizing, adapting Western ideas, technologies, and institutions while simultaneously trying to preserve its own traditions and identity. Beneath this transformation lay a profound sense of uncertainty, and it is this uncertainty that Kokoro explores so beautifully. At its heart, the novel tells a story of a young student who develops a friendship with an older man known only as sensei. As their relationship deepens, the student becomes increasingly fascinated by sensei's reserved personality, melancholic outlook, and mysterious past. And gradually, the novel unfolds into this powerful exploration of guilt and loneliness, betrayal, and the emotional costs of modern life. Visitors to Japan might comment on a certain thing that they notice, a reserve in social interactions. Conversations can be a little bit indirect, and emotions are not always expressed openly. While these observations can sometimes be exaggerated by outsiders, Kokoro provides a fascinating window into the cultural and historical roots of these ideas. So Sōseki Natsume explores concepts of duty, personal responsibility, social obligation, and the tension between the individual and society, questions that continue to shape Japanese culture more than a century later. Kokoro never feels distant or too academic. At its core, it's a really, really deeply human story about loneliness and the difficulty of truly knowing another person. It's a lovely book that I think anyone who is interested in Japan or Japanese writers, Japanese stories, definitely check out Kokoro. It's a must. Next, I have, this is quite a strange one perhaps, Japanese Ghost Stories by Lefcadio Hearn. Before visiting Japan, it's easy to become familiar with its temples and castles and modern cities. What is less obvious to many visitors is the rich world of folklore, spirits, ghosts, and supernatural creatures that have shaped Japanese culture for centuries. For that reason, few books provide a better introduction to Japan's imagination than Lefcadio Hearn's Japanese Ghost Stories. He was actually born in Greece, raised in Ireland, and eventually settled in Japan in the late 19th century. Hearn became one of the first Western writers to seriously document Japanese folklore for an international audience. He was fascinated by the country's legends, customs, and spiritual traditions, so he collected and retold many of its most enduring supernatural tales. Within these pages, readers will encounter ghostly women, wandering spirits, shape-shifting creatures, and cursed objects, and mysterious encounters that blur the boundary between the human and supernatural worlds. Sounds a bit Studio Ghibli, doesn't it? What I would say makes these stories more fascinating is that they are rarely horror stories in the modern sense. They are often, it's very Japanese still. They are often quiet, melancholic, and have a morality to them concerned with things like memory, of loyalty and loss, and the consequences of human actions. Reading Hearn's stories also provides insight into how traditional Japanese beliefs differ from many Western conceptions of the supernatural. Influenced by both Shinto and Buddhist traditions, Japanese folklore often portrays spirits as existing alongside everyday life rather than entirely separate from it. And also, nature itself can possess a spiritual dimension, and the boundary between living and the dead is often far less rigid than it appears. They can be seen throughout literature, anime, manga, cinema, and video games. Studio Ghibli, as I mentioned, these films such as Spirited Away and Princess Mononoke, for example, owe much of the folklore traditions that Hearn helped introduce to Western readers. Many of the spirits, the gods, mysterious creatures that appear in modern Japanese storytelling have their roots in the same legends found within the pages of these books. So if you come into Japan, I recommend these little spooky tales that offer a different way of seeing the country. Quiet shrines hidden in a forest, ancient cedar trees, a mist-covered mountain path, or a centuries-old temple. These can take on a new meaning when viewed through the lens of Japan's folklore and spiritual traditions. All right. Well, You might have seen this one coming. No list of books to read before visiting Japan would feel complete without Haruki Murakami. Whether you actually love his work or not, Murakami has become one of the most influential and widely read Japanese authors in the world. For many international readers, he serves as a gateway into Japanese literature itself. In much the same way that Shakespeare or Charles Dickens have become inseparable from England, Murakami has become one of the writers more deeply associated with modern Japan. Of all of his novels, this one here, The Wind-Up Bird Chronicle, is perhaps the one I would most recommend to readers hoping to understand something deeper about the country. On the surface, the story begins simply enough. Toru Okada, an unemployed man living a quiet suburban life in Tokyo, is searching for his missing cat. Soon afterwards, his wife also disappears, and what follows is a journey into a strange and increasingly surreal world filled with mysterious phone calls, abandoned wells, eccentric characters, dreams, memories, and hidden histories. Like much of Murakami's work, the novel resists easy explanation. It is part mystery, part psychological drama, part historical novel, and part dream, I suppose. Yet beneath its surreal surface lies something profoundly connected to modern Japan. One of Murakami's greatest strengths is his ability to capture the feeling of contemporary Japanese life. His characters often inhabit anonymous apartment buildings, and they commute through sprawling cities, they eat convenience store meals, they listen to records, and navigate lives marked by isolation and uncertainty. Beneath this apparent order and efficiency of modern society, Murakami reveals loneliness, disconnection, and unanswered questions. For many visitors, one of the first things that they fall in love with in Japan isn't actually its temples or castles or any of the famous landmarks. It's the convenience stores, whether it's a 7-Eleven or a Family Mart or Lawson. Japan's convenience stores, or konbini, have become an iconic part of the travel experience. Visitors quickly discover that these aren't the convenience stores they know from home. They provide everything from freshly prepared meals and coffee to train tickets, bill payments, and emergency umbrellas, which I've used many a time. Many travellers can probably still hear the cheerful entrance chimes and jingles that greet customers every time the automatic doors slide open. And few novels capture this uniquely Japanese institution better than Sayaka Murata's Convenience Store Woman. The novel follows Keiko Furukawa, a 36-year-old woman who has worked part-time in the same convenience store for nearly 2 decades. While her friends pursue careers and marriages and conventional adult lives, Keiko finds comfort and purpose within the carefully structured world of convenience stores. On the surface, the premise sounds simple, but yet beneath it lies a sharp and often surprisingly funny exploration of identity, conformity, and social expectations. What makes the novel so fascinating for readers interested in Japan is the way it examines the pressures that exist beneath the surface of everyday life. Throughout the story, Keiko is constantly reminded that she does not fit society's expectations. Friends, family members, and colleagues all expect her to pursue a more traditional path, yet Keiko herself feels more comfortable within the ordered routines of the convenience store. In many ways, the convenience store becomes a microcosm of Japanese society itself. Everything has its place, everyone has a role to perform, and the system functions because people understand the rules, even when those rules are unspoken. Murata is looking into ideas with remarkable wit and precision, raising questions about individuality, belonging, and what it means to live a meaningful life. If you are looking into coming to Japan, this novel offers an unusual but insightful window into contemporary Japan. While books such as Kokoro and The Wind-Up Bird Chronicle explore maybe deeper emotional and psychological landscapes, Convenience Store Woman focuses on the rhythms of ordinary modern life, their workplaces, routines, expectations, and social norms that shape everyday experiences. And perhaps that's what makes it so effective. According to ancient folklore, folding 1,000 origami cranes with patience and intention grants the folder a wish. Next, I have 1,000 Cranes, written by Yasunari Kawabata, Japan's first Nobel Prize-winning author. This quiet and deeply atmospheric novel is often regarded as one of the finest explorations of beauty, tradition, and loss in Japanese literature. The story revolves around Kikuji, a young man who becomes entangled in a series of relationships connected to his late father's past. Much of the novel unfolds around the world of the traditional tea ceremony, where seemingly ordinary objects like tea bowls, silk cloths, flower arrangements, and ceramics take on profound emotional and symbolic significance. On paper here, very little appears to happen. Yet, like much of the best Japanese literature, the novel derives its power not from dramatic events, but from suggestion, silence, and what remains unsaid. For many first-time visitors, one of the most striking aspects of Japan is the attention given to small details. A carefully arranged garden, the presentation of a meal, the texture of handmade pottery, the changing color of the seasons, all these things. Everyday objects are often treated not simply as functional items, but as things capable of carrying history, memory, significance, and beauty. Thousand Cranes captures this sensibility perfectly. The tea ceremony itself serves as a powerful symbol throughout the novel. Far more than simply preparing and drinking tea, it represents a way of engaging with the world, one that values patience, attentiveness, craftsmanship, and appreciation of fleeting moments. The novel also introduces readers to another recurring theme in Japanese culture, that of the bittersweet awareness that beauty and loss are often inseparable. Objects become precious because they age, relationships gain significance because they are temporary, and memories become meaningful because they cannot be relived. These ideas echo throughout Japanese art, Japanese literature, and philosophy, from Bashō's travel writing to the annual celebration of. So for you, for travelers traveling and hoping to understand Japan beyond its famous landmarks, Thousand Cranes offers something invaluable. It reveals a way of seeing, a way of finding meaning in small gestures, subtle emotions, and everyday rituals. Unlike many books on this list, Thousand Cranes does not explain Japan directly. It doesn't provide history lessons or travel advice or cultural analysis. Instead, it invites the reader to slow down and to stop and to observe carefully, to appreciate what is quiet, imperfect, and fleeting. And in doing so, it perhaps comes closer than any other novel on this list to capturing the elusive beauty at the heart of Japanese culture. So there we have my top 10 recommendations if you are traveling to Japan, planning a trip to Japan, or just generally interested in Japan. These are quintessentially Japanese. But as always, do you have any other recommendations for me? Have you read any of these books? Do you like them? Do you dislike them? Please comment below, like and subscribe to my channel, and I look forward to seeing you again very soon for more book talk and video essays.